Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this fifth round of the National Youth Debating Championship of Italy in the English language. So today we are facing each other inside proposition, the team from Sicily, the Rossters, and inside opposition, the team Masci Chieti from Abruzzo. So today we're debating the motion this house would boycott the Milano-Cortina 2026 Paralympic Games in response to the admission of Russian and Belarusian athletes. So, before any further ado, a little bit of housekeeping rules. As you know, the speaking time is 8 minutes, and with the time keeping up, you'll see the classic ding at the start and the end of every protected minute. So, no POIs before and after the ding. Then, if you all know the rules that you should know after 5 rounds of debating, I would invite the teams to present themselves, starting by side proposition in speaking order. So first proposition.
I'm the first speaker of the proposition team. I'm Noemi Bullo.
Okay. Second.
I'm the second speaker, and I'm Paola Traversa.
Okay. Third proposition.
I'm Giuseppe Cascio.
Okay, Giuseppe. Okay, and who's doing the reply speech?
Me, the second speaker.
So Paola Traversa. Okay.
Yes.
Then for side opposition, so Masci Chieti. Who's speaking first?
Me, Giulia Cedola.
Okay, Giulia Cedola. Then second opposition.
Gaia Legnini.
Gaia Legnini. Okay. And finally, third opposition.
Alessio Santa Croce.
Okay, Alessio Santa Croce. And then the reply speech.
Giulia Cedola.
Giulia, okay. Then, without further ado, as the teams presented themselves correctly, we can... first of all, I'm presenting myself. I'm Riccardo. I'll be chairing this debate alongside Marco Medda and Anne Tardi, that are my fellow panelists. So, without any further ado, we can start the debate with the first speaker of side proposition. The floor is yours.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Good evening, honorable judges and opposition team. I'm Noemi Bullo, and I'm the first speaker of the proposition team that is on the side of the motion. The International Paralympic Committee has allowed the Russian athletes to compete under the nation flag. This decision transformed what could have been a neutral participation into a highly visible political statement. Allowing the flag on a global stage during an active conflict sends a message of legitimacy and acceptance, and raising urgent questions about the moral role of international sport. A symbolic boycott of ceremonies or official events is not only justified but necessary. A boycott is an act of non-violent, voluntary abstention from an organization or an expression of protest. It is usually for moral, social, or political or environmental reasons. Everyone in their field of action can boycott. If I'm an athlete, I don't participate. If I'm the government, I don't let the athletes participate. If I'm myself, I just don't watch. Why is it necessary? Because those countries have a history in invasions. Since Russian invasion of Ukraine, it has caused hundreds of thousands of people that died and lost their homes. Entire cities were destroyed, lives permanently scared. Beyond Ukraine, Russia has been involved in other conflicts with Belarusian support. Now the risk is to normalize aggression and undermine the moral authority of the Paralympics. Sports are political. I refuse, sorry. Flags are the symbol of legitimacy. In this context, a symbolic boycott of ceremonies is not justified. It is a moral obligation. It sends clear message. The Paralympics stand for dignity, inclusion, and peace, not normalizing violence. These are the basis for our 3 points. The first one, the moral aim of the games. The second one, the connection between government and propaganda, which I will be expanding. And the third one, institutional and humanitarian impact, that the second speaker will introduce to you. So let's move on with our first point, the moral aim of the game. Games are meant to honor humanity and ethical values, not to grant legitimacy to governments whose actions violate them. Allowing Russian and Belarusian athletes to compete under the national flag undermines the core values of peace and unity that the Paralympic Games stand for. Allowing the Russian flags at the 2026 Milano-Cortina Paralympics effectively endorses a national active engage in war, sending a signal that aggression and human rights violation can coexist with international recognition in sport. I accept.
Well, since you talk about that letting these countries who do conflicts in means that you accept the violence, how do you justify the United States when it was invading Afghanistan and Iraq, where it was also accepted to participate in the Olympics? Why is Russia not allowed to participate, but the USA was? How do you justify that?
We are debating about Russia, so let's keep on the Russian case, please. To continue, we want to focus on the fact that this is not a condemnation of individual athletes who may themselves oppose to the conflict, but a protest against the institutional normalization of a government which is responsible for widespread suffering. When an institution publicly commits itself to moral principles, it assumes a responsibility. Those principles must guide its actions, especially in moments of tension. There is also a broader moral dimension. Global institutions, such as the Paralympic Committee, help shape international norms. When they fail to draw boundaries, they implicitly communicate what's tolerable. Silence and inclusion in moments of injustice can function as passive endorsement. If no explicit support is expressed, the absence of consequences signals that participation in the international community is not contingent upon respect. It is foundational norms. Let's now move on to our second point, which is the connection between sport and propaganda. Sport has always been political since ancient Greece, where every athlete represented his polis, to the 20th century, where European totalitarianisms used sports as one of the most important propaganda tools. Why can we divide sport from politics in an international competition? The answer is clear. To participate in such an event means to represent a nation, to be its face and compete for the glory of someone's own nation. That's why athletes wear national colors as sports uniform, get their national anthems and played, and they get on the podium and even get greeted personally by their own heads of state. Athletes represent the nation. Willingly or not, to represent means to become an ambassador, to be the face of a nation, and to give a face to a nation at an event. So, if participating means to represent, and to represent means to give glory to the represented nation in case of victory, and to give and to give glory means to promote. Therefore, athletes in Paralympic Games are an element of undeniable propaganda. Are we willing to give an opportunity of propaganda to nations that, as explained earlier, systematically violate human rights, promote war, and trample on peace, therefore posing themselves in a completely opposing position to the one promoted by the spirit of Olympics? To allow propaganda implies being in agreement to that propaganda itself. We can't agree on war propaganda. In light of these 2 points, and with the following point that the second speaker of my team will be expanded later, we firmly believe that it is necessary to boycott the Milano-Cortina 2026 Paralympic Game in response to the admission of Russian and Belarusian athletes. As we have shown in the first point, where we explained the moral aim of the Paralympic game themselves, and as we have showed by showing the connection between participating and representing a nation. I've concluded my speech. Thank you.
Thank you, the first speaker proposition, for her fine speech. So now, if everyone is ready, we can go on the debate with the first speaker of side opposition, Giulia. Whenever you're ready.
Okay.
Bye.
Okay. So, good evening, everyone, honorable judges, fellow debaters, and coaches and spectators here. I'm Giulia, the first speaker of the opposition team, and today we are here to debate the motion. This House believes that Milano-Cortina 2026 Paralympic Games, in response to the admission of Russian and Belarusian athletes. So, first of all, let me rebuttal what the first speaker of the proposition team said. So, first of all, in your first point, you kept saying that we cannot normalize violence. Because, as you said, Paralympic Games are very important tools to promote inclusion, equality, and they, of course, inspire lots of people around the world. But in this way, not allowing Russian and Belarusian athletes to compete in this game, we are not solving the problem, because we are not considering equality. So that would be my first argument. But first of all, let me... Okay, yeah.
What about the apartheid case? For example, South Africa abstained from the Olympics and then something changed. What about it?
Yeah, but in most of the cases, it is an action that is not effective. In fact, my second argument will be exactly that this change can be would be ineffective and useless, just because history shows that that boycotts of sporting events rarely change political situations. So in 90% of cases, this is not true. So as I was saying, when you say that this is not right to... No, sorry, I refuse. To make them to participate, you are saying that they participate as neutral athletes, and therefore there will be many difficult and emotional situations. In fact, athletes are so proud of their origins, so it doesn't make sense to not making them participate for their nation. Now, our team line is composed of... Yeah.
Are you aware of the fact that athletes, when in a global games, are representing their country, the ideals of their country? The ideals, not just their individuality.
Okay. Yeah, but we are saying that history shows that boycotts of sporting events rarely change political situations. So this doesn't make sense anyway. So as I was saying, there are three main arguments that we want to discuss, and my first point is equality. So there are many conflicts happening around the world right now, and if we say that Russian and Belarusian athletes should not participate, what about athletes from other countries involved in wars or political conflicts? they should also be excluded too. So it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense. Many nations could be banned and game would be stopped. And these games would stop being a space of unity and become a space of political punishment. So athletes do not choose government decisions, as we all know. They train, they sacrifice, they work a lot every single day, and every day they overcome challenges. In fact, we are talking about Paralympic athletes. So they had already faced significant obstacles. Paralympic Games should promote peace, dialogue, and respect. And boycotting the Milano-Cortina Paralympic Games would not promote justice and equality.
Point.
No, thanks. Another strong reason why we oppose the boycott is that this would be ineffective and useless, as I was saying. History shows that boycotts rarely change political situations, and this do not modify military or political decisions, because athletes do not compete just because of this. Political conflicts are solved by diplomacy, negotiation, and international pressure. Secondly, a boycott would hurt the athletes, so not the governments. And they train for years, every single day, just to participate in a competition in which they just have one opportunity in their lifetime to participate. Boycotting them would remove one of the few spaces in which painful interactions is still possible. Boycotting could create more tension between the nation, and this will be counterproductive. So we value equality, we value fairness, and we value inclusiveness. This motion is, of course, unfair, discriminatory, and pointless, as I showed before. So my second speaker, Galanini, is going to discuss about vulnerability of the stakeholders. That would be Russian and Belarusian athletes, as she will say. Then, as I said before, history, boycott and sporting events do not rarely change political situation. Think about the Cold War. It didn't finish because of the boycott of Moscow and Los Angeles Olympic Games. Peace must be promoted through sport, and Paralympic Games are so important tools thanks to which we can promote inclusion, equality, and they do support human rights and accessibility, and they inspire people around the world. So since they are very important tools, we must keep attention in everything that considers them. So why should you vote for us? We are proving our ideas will be totally, this will be inclusive, and therefore, thank you, we beg you to vote for us.
Thank you, the first speaker side opposition, for her fine speech. So now, when everyone is ready, we can go on with the debate with the second speaker for side proposition, Paola. The floor is yours.
Okay, I'm ready. My speech will start in 3, 2, 1, now. Good afternoon, everyone, opposition team and honorable judges. So I would like to start my speech with the rebuttal of what the first speaker of opposition team has said. So first of all, you said that nothing will change through boycott, but as we will prove later, actions actually make changes, and history proves that too. I've said before, through the boycott of the Olympic Games, South Africa reached South Africa reached to the isolation of the apartheid, and also, we are not saying that the purpose of the boycott is to immediately alter government's policy, and that will be ridiculous. We are just saying that the boycott is a step forward because it sends a strong moral signal. So, second of all, athletes compete under their flag. The athletes are political. We athletes cannot abstain from their nation's politics. They when they participate in the Olympics and even in the Paralympics, they are representing their nation. They are not just competing for personal recognition. And in fact, for them, there are other opportunities to compete at the global level. That is not just the Olympics. The Olympics are a symbol of peace. We are not promoting then violence nor injustice. We are just promoting a way to peacefully make the other nations, make the world hear our voices. So now I would like to go on to our third argument. So in 2022, following the invasion, the International Paralympics Committee made the principal decision to exclude Belarusian and Russian athletes. So, what has changed since then? The conflict.
Why?
Yes.
Because the apartheid didn't end, not because of the boycott at the Olympics, but because of sanctions. Don't you agree that the boycott of South Africa at the Olympics is practically irrelevant to this conversation?
No, the boycott was a huge sign that South Africa wanted a change, wanted to make a change. Change is made up of different things. Now I would like to move on with my argument. The conflict between Russia and Ukraine hasn't ended. If anything, it has escalated. By readmitting them now, we are effectively neutralizing the conflict in the eyes of the public. We are signaling that international outrage has an expiration date. And that if a war lasts long enough, we simply get used to it. So this is a dangerous precedent. It turns a global tragedy into a background noise that no longer interferes with the Olympic Games. Furthermore, the Olympic and Paralympic motto was recently updated in 2021 to now include the word comunite, the Latin word communiter, together as a community. How can there be togetherness when some competitors represent a state that violates the sovereignty of their peers? Now, despite the conflict continuing, the stance has been reversed, and Russian and Belarusian athletes are allowed to participate in the Olympics. Since the decision has already been made, the responsibility, as our first speaker has already said, shifts to governments, athletes, and common people. Our boycott is not an attempt to undo the decision. It is a refusal to legitimate it. The IPC, in fact, first of all, at an institutional level, because the IPC is a governing body, but is not morally infallible. When institutions reverse principled decision without change, no, thank you, in circumstances, so accountability becomes necessary. A boycott will give signals that legitimacy is conditional and will demonstrate that states are not passive participants, and would also preserve moral standards, even when the institutions try to dilute them. So we are not obviously attacking the Paralympic movement. We are just protecting its integrity from institutional inconsistency. And secondly, at a humanitarian level. So community presupposes mutual recognition of sovereignty and respect. When some competitors represent a state that actively violates the sovereignty of another, the concept of togetherness becomes just performative, formal. No, thank you. So yes, as I said before, athletes are individuals, but when an athlete competes in the Olympics or in the Paralympics, they do not represent their own individuality, but their own nation. While an athlete has individual merit, on the global stage, they are ambassadors of their national system. And simply to ignore this is to ignore reality. At a humanitarian level, it is right to boycott because participation risks normalizing ongoing suffering. So, when a conflict continues, but the world gathers in celebration at events like the Milano-Cortina 2026 Paralympic Games, the message can become that the war is no longer urgent, and over time, the tragedy turns into simple background noises. So a boycott would refuse normalizations. So finally, if we claim to stand with those affected by the conflict, but are unwilling to accept even symbolic costs, our support becomes rhetorical. If we participate without protest, we teach the world that justice fades with time. If we boycott instead, we affirm that principles do not expire. And in moments like this, silence, it is not neutrality. It is normalization. This is the end of my speech. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, second speaker side proposition, for her fine speech. So now, when everyone is ready, we can go on with the debate with the second speaker for side opposition. Whenever you're ready.
Okay, so I'm Gaia Nini, I'm the speaker of the opposition team, and my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. So, fellow debaters and honorable judges, I will start my speech by rebutting what the second speaker of the proposition team has just said. So, first of all, you talk about the apartheid and how boycotting was useful for this operation, but we must say that it finished for internal resistance, and it is false to say that it's finished because of boycotting. It was a unique historical case which finished, in fact, because of economical things, and you cannot say and sanctions, etc. You cannot say that boycotting was useful in that case. So that point does not have a base. Yes.
Doesn't not admitting also mean to take a moral stance more than wanting a change?
Can you repeat, please?
Doesn't not admitting some nation in Olympics mean also to take a moral stance?
Okay, it does not. It has nothing to say with what I just said, but this was. I was about to talk about this. I was about to say that the flag does not represent a political government. So it does not make any sense, because a national culture, the flag represents a national culture, history and identity, which may have nothing to do with the people that are participating in Paralympic Games. So with the athletes, it doesn't have nothing to do. So you also talked about togetherness and etc. But boycotting violates in fact unity, and it doesn't promote togetherness, because as my first speaker mentioned before, she showed you the definition of Paralympic Games, which should promote inclusion and equality, and support human rights and accessibility, and inspire people around the world, and breaking the stereotypes, which is so important. So excluding those people, excluding those flags, is not what does not follow the aim of the Paralympic Games, and this is important to say. Okay, all these things said, here's the main point I would like to raise. So if you follow my reasoning, when we discuss about this topic, we must focus and think about how vulnerable the stakeholders are, because we are talking about Paralympic athletes. Those are athletes that work incredibly hard and put much effort in training in order to participate to this kind of important and relevant competitions. So it's very relevant and important for them. And we must not underestimate the impact that it could have also on their mental health, because they are still people with disabilities. And this is so important. Those are people who often fight to be seen as equals. Being thrown out for political reasons, which have nothing to do with the sport, with their sport and their passion, can make them feel more invisible, or like second-class citizens all over again. And it's what they fight every day. And it's exactly why we established the Paralympic Games, so to promote inclusion and to make those athletes feel seen and feel like all their effort could be repaid. This also, no, sorry, I don't accept it. Excluding flags, excluding the Russian flags and Belarusian flags, means humiliating athletes who should be, we are saying that they should be ashamed of their identity, which, and this whole situation can lead to depression, anxiety, or even burnout. Sorry, I refuse. Because as I mentioned before, those are extremely vulnerable people. So it is against the whole aim of Paralympic Games, which is inclusion, as I said before. So, to recap what I said, we said that excluding flags means humiliating athletes who should be ashamed of their identity, and those are athletes who already face a lot of injustice because of their physical condition, and this can lead to health, to mental health problems for them. And we also said, yes.
So we should forget taking a moral stance against war just because of mental health of the disabled athletes.
No, I'm not saying that, because as I said before, the political situation should not affect this sport. We cannot the flag does not represent a political government at all. So it is just something more, because as I said before, the whole aim of Paralympic Games is to make those people feel more visible, so it can damage them. This is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that we should just forget what has happened, except it's not what I said. So having said so, I conclude my speech.
Thank you to second speaker opposition for her fine speech. So now, when everyone is ready, we can go on with the third speeches of this debate, starting with third speaker of side proposition, Giuseppe. Whenever you're ready.
Just a moment.
Yeah. We can wait.
Hi, I'm Giuseppe, the third speaker of the proposition team. In my speech will start in 3, 2, 1. So we've seen in this debate that we've debated about several values about this motion that we're analyzing, and I'll start by the principle of I would say the spirit of what not admitting an athlete means. Your team said that not admitting doesn't make sense because it isn't as efficient to stop wars and stop political problems. On this problem, I mean, we can say it took efficiency as a principle. But first of all, we've taken an example of how boycotting Olympics shed light on the apartheid problem in South Africa that you didn't accept because you said that it was also part of an economic international pressure, and I'd say that okay, it can also be the political interference, but we can't deny that the population awareness about apartheid in South Africa grew with the boycotting. So that has to be a point. But moreover, even if you were right, and then it wouldn't be efficient to solve problems and to solve political problems, boycotting and not admitting therefore athletes in Olympics. Well, to not admit doesn't mean to be efficient in the problem. It means to take a moral stance against the problem, a moral stance that Olympics has to take. Olympics, as you also said, stands on equality, on peace between populations. If a nation is violating these rights, is violating people's rights, therefore we can't let that nation have the opportunity to showcase, to be promoted, to have propaganda, as one of our arguments said. As an example, if I don't invite someone to my place,
POI.
Accept.
Can you explain why the Olympics has to take a moral standing on political affairs, even though it should have nothing to do with politics in general?
That's the second point I was going to discuss, which is the different position we have about the role of the athlete in sports. As I'm going to explain, athletes aren't just athletes, especially in Olympics. Olympics are an occasion for propaganda, for showcasing. Therefore, Olympics have a political role, and this role can be denied. Going on with what I was saying before about the spirit of not admitting means to take your stance. Therefore, if I don't if I'm not inviting someone to my place, it doesn't mean I want him inherently to change. I just want him, I just don't get along with him. And if Olympics principle is about peace, how can Olympics get along with war criminals? Going on my second point is the position of athletes in Olympic Games. As we backed with our second argument, well, on your side, your team is giving an image of Olympics that is clearly fallacious. You are denying that they have a political role, but are you denying why then we play national anthems after a victory? Why are athletes get greeted by heads of states? Why has sports always been an instrument, a tool of propaganda? You can't deny that.
Why?
Accept.
Can you explain how sport was used as propaganda and any historical examples?
Fascism, Stalinism, it's clear where you see posters everywhere about sport. One of the first principles of fascism was the creation of a new man that was also a sportsman and a victorious sportsman. And the famous Olympics taken in Monaco during Nazism period were a great example of political propaganda. Images of the Nazi parties were everywhere. Sports is a occasion of showcase, and especially in Olympics, where athletes are not competing as athletes but as representatives of their nations. Therefore, they represent their nation, they are ambassador of their nation. Their victory means the glory of their nation. You can't deny that. It has always been like this since ancient Greece, where Olympics became a thing. I refuse. Therefore, our team is proposing a clear view of the problem, a view that sees the Olympics as an undeniable place of propaganda, of showcase. Therefore, we can't let war criminals showcase in an event that has as its principal value peace, because we would destroy that principle itself. Going on with something, other things you said that I think are a great contradiction, not only with principally with the motion itself. You took the example of USA. You said why boycotting? Why boycotting? Because of the admitting of Russia and Belarusian, and when USA are admitted. Well, this is just not in motion. We are debating about the situation of Russia and Belarus. If we are talking about USA, then it's another motion. So that was completely out of the motion. And moreover, you said that to promote that, especially Paralympics have the principle of promoting equality. But equality means to respect. And if we want to promote the respect towards others, we can't let Olympics become the place of showcasing more war crimes. So I'd like you to answer to my question. Do you think that showcasing war is in line with peace values, as we can say basically you are saying during this debate? Thank you.
Thank you, the third speaker, Side Proposition, for his fine speech. So now, if everyone is ready, can you just wait a minute for Anne to write down? We can finish the constructive part of the debate with the third speaker of Side Opposition, Alessio. Whenever you're ready.
Hello, I'm the third speaker, Alessio, and would like to rebuttal the points of the colleagues at the proposition team. I would like to first focus on the point of South Africa and how the boycott allegedly helped to stop the apartheid. The proposition claims that somehow the boycott of the Olympic Games of South Africa somehow contributed to stopping the injustice that was happening in the country at the time. However, there is no proof of this whatsoever. In fact, the stopping of the apartheid had nothing to do with the boycott or the sports at all. It had to do with sanctions and internal resistance. Sports never contributed to stopping the apartheid. They had a minimal impact on it. There were other factors at play. So it is simply untrue that somehow the boycott would somehow help these countries in stopping these conflicts and this injustice happening. Not to mention that the colleagues at the proposition keep claiming that somehow the sports and propaganda are somehow related, even though they have shown no proof of this. They keep claiming that somehow these countries utilize sports to keep fueling conflict. Justice, no thank you. However, this is simply untrue. The Paralympic Games have nothing to do with politics. They have a lot to do with ethics. There have been a lot of cases where competition helped bring to social justice, but there was never a case where boycotting a country somehow brought to less injustice than previously. That was simply not the case. Not to mention that even though the proposition is against representing the flag and the country in sport, in the context of the sport, it is simply anti-constitutional to take away this right from the athletes. The right to a nationality is a constitutional right in the Declaration of Human Rights. Taking this right away from the Paralympics will be anti-constitutional and will be against their rights, which would therefore not promote the values of the Olympics, which were unity, equality, and so on. Therefore, it is not only unjust, it is completely unethical. Not to mention, the proposition keeps claiming that the Olympics and the Paralympics have to take a moral standing when it comes to political affairs. There is nowhere written in the regulations that they have to take a standing. They promote values, ethical values that they want their athletes to have, such as sportsmanship mainly, but they don't have to take any standing regarding politics. The fact that the Russian and Belarusian athletes were banned to begin with is against the values of the Olympics. They have nothing to do with these matters. They're not involved in the Ukrainian war at all. Not to mention that even if we were to suppose that even though we can all agree that what Russia did is unconstitutional, there's no proof whatsoever that this boycott is going to stop the Russian leaders and the generals from keeping on fueling the conflict. There have already been sanctions taken for those countries. That did not stop them. Stopping the athletes from those countries from representing their country in the Paralympics is not going to hurt the leaders of the countries. They are not the stakeholders here. They're not involved in this matter at all. This is not going to benefit or result as a disadvantage for the leaders at all. The stakeholders here are purely athletes who put in their hard work. They put in hard sweat, tears, and blood for the sport, and now they simply cannot represent the country, which again, as I explained before, it is a constitutional right. Therefore, not only are the measures taken by the proposition team simply useless, is futile, it has no purpose, and it will bring no advantage whatsoever to the countries at hand, but it's also unjust to the athletes. It's unconstitutional. Not to mention, it is also counterproductive. The Olympics promote values such as unity and sportsmanship, as the proposition said. It is through these values of sportsmanship and through competing that these countries get closer. By not allowing them to represent themselves, the tension only gets higher, especially in a stage like this where there's very high tension between Russia and the rest of the world. Therefore, it is not only unjust, it is not only useless, it is actually counterproductive as well. It is against the values that the proposition stand for. So it will inevitably backfire no matter how we look at it. Not to mention, you cannot claim that the Olympics is somehow going to assist war criminals. The Olympics has to take no moral standing, as said previously. We cannot claim that the Olympics has to somehow support or somehow supports, or by somehow allowing these athletes, it somehow supports their actions. It has nothing to do. There's no correlation between letting athletes from a country compete and supporting what that country is. There are two different stakeholders. Sports has nothing to do with political affairs. There is a lot of promotion, there's a lot of advertising, there are a lot of sponsors, but it will not fuel politics. It will not push a country to take an action A or action B.
Why?
No, thank you. And not to mention that allowing these athletes to compete does not normalize violence, as the first speaker said of the proposition. We're not normalizing anything. We're normalizing sportsmanship. We're normalizing training. We're normalizing competition. We're normalizing staying together, togetherness. As the proposition said, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing unmoral or counterproductive of allowing these athletes to compete. It is simply going to lead to the greater good, or at the very best, not contribute at all to the geopolitics. Therefore, you cannot claim that it's somehow detrimental to countries who are involved in the conflict. It is simply not. Yes, thank you.
So should we now stop awarding medals by country? Because along what you have said, athletes are just individuals.
I did not understand the word you said.
So should we stop awarding medals by country and having delegations just because athletes represent themselves and not their country, like in other competitions?
We should still award the country. Again, we have to separate the concept of country and politics. Whoever is leading the country does not completely represent the action that the country is going to take, but they don't represent the whole country. They don't represent the culture. They don't represent the history. In Italy and USA, there have been countless leaders who have done horrible stuff, especially presidents like Nixon, especially presidents like JFK, who have done stuff that was, let's say, controversial. However, that does not mean that the whole country is represented by these individuals. The country is represented by the people inside them. Right? The Paralympics represent the Russian people, not the Russian generals, not just the Russian generals, not just the Russian president. The Russian, again, as previously said, they are unrelated to this topic. So bringing this conversation is simply useless and futile. It is simply adding confusion to a topic that should not be discussed at all, debated. It should be obvious that these people should be allowed to compete. They have done no wrong. There is nothing unjust they have done towards the community that will somehow justify getting them out of the Paralympics, especially since they're already disadvantaged, right? They already have disabilities which stop them from competing to their full potential, and they found ways to work around that. And now, just because the leader of the country is taking actions that are just, that they probably don't agree with, now they cannot compete anymore or cannot represent their country, which has done probably a lot of good things, just not under that specific leader. I like the rest.
Thank you to the third speaker opposition for his fine speech. So now we can consider the constructive part of the debate finished. So we can go on with the reply speeches, starting with side opposition. So Giulia, the floor is yours.
Aspetta.
Bye-bye.
No. Okay, so good evening again, and we've come to the end of this debate. And today I'm here to show you, to prove you why our team won. So, as the opposition, we stand firm. Boycotting the Milano-Cortina Paralympic Games is wrong, ineffective, and fair. Our team line has always rested on three key points. So, inequality, inefficacy, and vulnerable stakeholders. Now, first, for us, the boycott is unequal. So the proposition targets only Russia and Belarus, ignoring the many other countries around the world that commit serious human rights violations. The Paralympic Games are about equality, inclusion, fairness, and by excluding only certain nations for us, the boycott becomes inconsistent. It creates a division of who matters more, and this is not possible. Then our second point is inefficacy. Now, the proposition claims that it sends a moral and political message. So they kept talking about propaganda. But here, I just repeat what Alessio said before. So history shows us the opposite. So we talked about Moscow Olympics and the Los Angeles Olympics. So as we've shown, the effect of boycotts is often counterproductive. And so while the proposition argues that boycotts are useful, history proves that they are largely ineffective. So another point of clash was the distinction between useful and unuseful. Propaganda has just nothing to do with Paralympic Games. We claim that sports have a lot to do with ethics, but not politics. So this is another point of clash. So ethics versus political sports. Third, we must consider the actual stakeholders, as Gaia was talking. The athletes themselves, particularly Paralympians. These individuals have trained years and years, and a boycott punished these vulnerable athletes. Furthermore, flags at Paralympics represent countries as cultural, historical, and national identity, not the political decision of a specific government at a specific time. So punishing athletes because of their action or government misinterprets the symbolism of the games and their flags. So we have looked at these two scenarios, and I've proved you how and why our team won. So having said this, I rest my case and thank you so much. I beg you to vote for us.
Thank you to the reply speaker for side opposition for her fine speech. So now, if everyone is ready, we can get to the last speech of the debate. So the reply speech by side proposition by Paola. The floor is yours.
Good afternoon again. My speech will start in 3, 2, 1, now. So we've now come to the end of this debate, and I would like to first address the 3 points of clash that our team has found in this debate, that are the moral value of boycott, the impact of boycott itself, and athletes in the Olympic Games. So, first of all, the moral value of the boycott. The opposition has claimed during the debate that boycott is just an act of violence, that it undermines athletes or harms the Paralympic movement. For the proposition team, instead, a boycott is a peaceful form of opposition, a non-violent tool that allows governments, institutions, and the international community to take a stand without firing a single shot. And silence, on the other hand, is complicity. That choosing to participate despite principled concerns normalizes injustice and sends the message that principles are negotiable. Second of all, the impact of the boycott. The opposition has argued that boycotts achieve nothing, but proposition team has demonstrated that change is really instantaneous, and also how history has showed that symbolic actions have real consequences over time. That a boycott today is a step forward for tomorrow. And third of all, the athletes in the Olympic Games. Finally, the opposition has claimed that athletes are just individuals and therefore boycotts punish the innocent, misunderstanding the reality of international competitions like Paralympics. Proposition has instead demonstrated that athletes represent their countries, their flags, their committees, and their national systems. Principles, and that principles like national representation and its connection to politics and moral responsibility cannot be ignored. So, at the end of this debate, the values in contrast are ethical responsibility on one hand, which we uphold as proposition, and equality, which the opposition emphasizes. So, we, as the proposition team, argue that the Paralympic Games are founded on human dignity, inclusion, and peace, and therefore carry a moral obligation. Displaying the Russian flag or the Belarusian flag and their anthem at Milano-Cortina 2026 would normalize a government actively engaged in war. So instead, the opposition emphasizes equality, arguing that all athletes should compete regardless of their government's actions. They claim that punishing individual athletes violates fairness and goes against inclusion. However, if we prioritize equality without considering the ethical consequences, we risk sending a message that mass violence and human suffering are irrelevant to the moral sphere of sport. So, to conclude my speech, the choice is yours, judges. Do you consider equality meaningful if it ignores mass suffering? That's the end of my speech. Thank you all.
Thank you to the reply speaker by side proposition for her fine speech. So now we can declare this debate finished. So we just give everyone a big round of applause. You really great job. So now I will just close the recording and then